And then we will move into the metta meditation. We're going to be breaking that down into 6 different practices. And so really it's just focusing on one particular category at a time. And then the full, more formal practice, which many of you may be familiar with, is including all the categories in one practice, which we're going to move toward the second half of our course. So today we're going to start with love, and I'll talk a little bit about why. And we're going to be sending 4 wishes, 4 feelings, 4 qualities of the 4 measurables. May you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be at ease. And so we're going to be using our imagination to think about, what do these wishes mean for whatever category of being we're focusing on. These are beings who we tend to be closest to. They bring up feelings of love, care, warmth, and happiness for us. And metta tends to flow more readily for these beings. So starting with including them in the practice helps us to experience loving kindness with more ease, a little more readily. So we're able to access it a little easier. In theory, right? So this is all in theory. Then we move to ourselves. This is essential in order for us to send metta to others, since we can't give to others what we don't already have familiarity with in ourselves. And it can be helpful to keep in mind that you yourself, as much as anybody else in the world, deserve your love, care, and affection. That's the foundation from which we're able to offer metta to others. And the more that we can cultivate that for ourselves, in my experience, the easier and more naturally it flows out to others. When I can give myself a break on this thing, that's really hard or challenging, it's easier and just transfers more naturally to, I can give you a break on that too. I know what that feels like. So that's the connection. It's interconnected in that way. And that's really the foundation from which we are able to send metta to others. Some other traditions might have you start with yourself, and there's, again, nothing wrong with that. But where we feel or find, just for the purposes of this class, and as teachers, we find a lot of people are challenged by giving love to ourselves. Seems to be a little more of a Western thing from what I can kind of gather. We just have this struggle with being kind to ourselves. Where does that even come from? And so starting with ourselves can actually be a little more tricky or challenging for a lot of us. Certainly was for me. It was just like a big stuck point for me. So starting off with somebody who we love can really just set the stage for, oh yeah, I feel that there. Oh yeah, there it is. There's a little flash of it. There's a little more, of a touch in with that when we start with people that we love. And then, okay, can I actually have this feeling for myself? So just to give a little insight into the choice for that, in case there are some of you who are familiar with it being presented in a different way. And I think in the Sharon Salzberg book, she starts with self too. And that's pretty traditional. But I just wanted to point that out just so there's a little clarity. And so once we start to kind of work with and feel it for ourselves, can we start to extend it out to people outside of our loving circle, outside of our sense of self and our own kind of self-importance? Can we start to think about beings that we don't ever think about, neutral beings? We don't tend to ever think about them. They bring up feelings of indifference, no particular feelings at all. But like most of the world that we live in, billions and billions upon billions of beings are comprised of beings we don't know or ever think about. So including them in the practice helps to bring them in clearer focus. It helps us to expand our capacity for extending love, which according to the Buddhist tradition, we have that capacity. So we're tapping into that a little bit with this particular category. And then finally, we move to those we experience difficulty with. And these are beings who tend to bring up feelings of anger, fear, aversion. It's tough. and it's meant to be tough. It's intentionally tough. But the view here is that if we solidify feelings of aversion, we tend to lose touch with our capacity to love and show compassion. So they're like clogging up the pipes, so to speak. And when we include these beings in the practice, it helps us to kind of gradually loosen these fixations and helps us to recognize our shared humanity. And really important to note that we're not condoning harmful behaviors, but we're shifting our perspective to the perspective of loving kindness and interconnection rather than of separateness, which is usually how we engage with those we experience difficulty with. It's, me versus them. And so we're kind of dissolving or attempting to loosen that up a little bit and think about this from the perspective of interconnection, wholeness, oneness in our shared humanity. And it's hard, and that's okay. That's totally okay and workable from the perspective of this practice.